This is Spilling Royal Tea with Sean Mandell.
So it's another week where Meghan Markle is the big story in a time where we would normally be talking about King Charles and his upcoming coronation. Big story came out that Meghan and Charles actually exchanged letters after the big Oprah interview 2 years ago, in which they specifically discussed the member of the royal family who'd had a conversation about Prince Archie's skin tone, how dark he would be, and in Meghan's words, expressing concern.
Now, this story has a lot of layers to it. So we want to peel them back just one at a time. I think maybe just starting with the actual letter correspondence that you're talking about between Meghan and King Charles. So this happened after the Oprah interview.
After the Oprah interview, and Charles, it started with Charles. Charles wrote Meghan a letter. No other senior member of the royal family had reached out to Meghan and Harry after this, right? Which is not entirely surprising. But Charles did. Charles wrote this letter, and he expressed his sadness over the rift in the royal family. Both he and Meghan, because Meghan then writes a letter in response, but both of them name this individual who we don't know to this day, the name of the person who raised concerns about Archie's skin tone, how dark he would be.
So these letters have been leaked, but that name has not been revealed.
Exactly. So it seems like either the full letter itself has not been given to reporters or was not leaked to reporters, or has been redacted by the publication, which we should say as well, this was a story that was broken by The Telegraph, a newspaper in the UK.
We should also mention that the person that Charles defended, the person who allegedly made this comment or had these concerns about Archie's skin color, saying that the remark was not made in malice.
And Meghan, she agrees. Like, they seem to be on the same page about this, that there was no malice. And Meghan apparently does not accuse, says that she doesn't, not only does not accuse, but says that she doesn't think this person is racist. What she gets to is the question of unconscious bias. And she does apparently, again, according to this report, apparently does basically accuse the monarchy and the royal family of having unconscious bias and not really doing anything around it.
Which is what we heard Harry say when he was on his press tour. And when Tom Bradley asked him about it, he said, I don't think it's racism. I think it's unconscious bias. So
and that press tour was about his book that came out in January, Spare, and that was referencing again that comment from Oprah.
So overall, the letter was warm in tone.
Which is important.
Yes. But it doesn't seem to have completely eased the tensions between the two sides.
No.
And it still left unresolved this question of unconscious bias in the royal family. And it doesn't appear that any steps have been taken, formally or informally, to do better.
Right. There was no follow-up, really, it seems. That's what we've been led to believe from this report, that Meghan sends her letter and then that's it. And the report goes on to say that, as we now know, that Meghan is not attending the coronation. And the report says that, according to royal sources, and that the palaces felt that there was no way in which they weren't really planning on Meghan attending. They didn't think she would attend the coronation ever, even though she was, from what we understand, invited, because of the fact that these letters didn't go anywhere. There wasn't resolution.
Right. I think the question that this raises for a lot of us is like, why now? And we are leading up to the coronation. So, is there sort of malice behind the leaking of these private letters and who leaked them? Meghan does not seem to be too pleased that they were leaked.
No, she does not. And she released a statement about this story, which is a little surprising. I mean, not fully, because obviously Meghan and Harry have been very clear that they are going to comment on and respond to stories about them, particularly when they think they are inaccurate. But
lawsuit accompanying this one.
I mean,
Yet.
Well, because, and that is a fair point, because of the fact that one of their first lawsuit, Meghan and Harry's first lawsuit against a media organization, was because of a letter that leaked that she wrote to her father, Thomas Markle. Now, the difference in this case is that we don't have the actual letter. With Thomas Markle's letter, we didn't have all of it, but there were actually like pictures in the Daily Mail of excerpts of it. Like we had verbatim excerpts.
Right. In her handwriting as well, right?
In her perfect calligraphy, because she did calligraphy as a side hustle before she was a duchess, which I love. But she did respond. And I think it's important to read her statement in full. So this is what she said. And this was about within 24 hours, I believe, of the story coming out. The statement was, the Duchess of Sussex is going about her life in the present, not thinking about correspondence from 2 years ago related to conversations from 4 years ago. Any suggestion otherwise is false and frankly ridiculous. We encourage tabloid media and various royal correspondents to stop the exhausting circus that they alone are creating.
Ooh, scathing.
It's pretty scathing. It's
frankly very Meghan.
It's very Meghan. You know, there was one line, Maggie, that you and I had discussed about this that I thought was really interesting and tips us off that this is about the coronation.
Yeah.
And that is the line, any suggestion otherwise is false and frankly ridiculous.
Right, because it leads us to wonder, what is the suggestion otherwise, right?
Right. And I think, reading between the lines, I think that what she's talking about here is that the suggestion is her motivation for why she's not going to the coronation.
Right.
That this report seems to hint at that Meghan didn't want to go to the coronation because she had this letter exchange with her father-in-law and she wasn't happy with where it left off, that the issues of unconscious bias that she raised were not addressed, so she's not going to the coronation.
Right.
What Meghan has said is that she's not going because it's her son's birthday.
Royal sources have said that because of this letter exchange, they never expected Meghan to go to the coronation.
Right.
So that would lead us all to believe that this was at least part of the preamble leading up to this moment of, you know, whether to go or not. But it's not Meghan's narrative, right? Like her narrative.
It's not her narrative.
Is that she's staying home with the kids and celebrating Archie's birthday. And so I don't know. I'm wondering if Meghan should have responded so vehemently in this letter. Like, does she have a right to be upset?
I think she has a right to be upset. The question that we've raised before on this podcast is whether it's the right tact, right? Whether this is savvy or smart, because they are very clearly led by emotion.
I can totally empathize with the not wanting to be portrayed for the reason why, you know, you're not going to your father-in-law's coronation.
And as a liar, basically.
Right. But at the same time, the kind of leaking or unearthing of these letters, you know, Sean, you and I have talked about how this isn't just a family drama, but this is tied to government as well.
It's about government. This is, you know, Charles is the head of state. There are accusations that the head of state and his office are guilty of unconscious bias on issues of race.
That's very serious.
So we have a great guest. We could talk about these details for hours, but I have a great friend and guest that we are bringing on today who is going to talk to us more about this. Jodie Davis. He is an award-winning producer and entertainment executive with years of experience covering the royals, covering the royal wedding, and of course also recently the Queen's funeral. So, and I've worked with him on some royal projects in the past, so I think he will be a great person to talk with about all of this.
Yeah, so let's spill some royal tea.
This is Spilling Royal Tea, a podcast that follows the piping hot stories of the British royal family, from London to Montecito, all the way to the upcoming coronation of King Charles. I'm Sean Mandell, a producer, pop culture devotee, and part-time royal correspondent.
And I'm Maggie Van Dorn, the show's producer, Sean's biggest fan, and his occasional sidekick.
In each episode, we will spill the tea.
That's American for gossip.
On the latest stories about the heir, the spare, and their kin. Tea will be served with some cultural context and history from across the pond that you can't go without. So without further ado, let's spill the royal tea.
Okay, so as always, there are other royal headlines happening this week besides the main story we're focusing on, which is the war of the letters between Charles and Meghan. So we want to flag these to you, but we just don't have enough time to get into all of them. So here's a little teaser for them, and if they grab your attention, take a look-see to find out more.
Yeah. We can make time for Prince Louis's 5th birthday pictures.
We have to make time for Prince Louis because he is the star of any royal outing that he partakes in. And we have, as you said, some new pictures of Prince Louis that were released by Kate and William ahead of his 5th birthday in a wheelbarrow that Kate is carrying through the country. It's just, again, quintessentially them.
It's so bucolic royal birthday life.
J. Crew catalog again. And Kate didn't take the photo because obviously she's the one, wielding the wheelbarrow, which is interesting just because she is usually the one that takes the photos. I really hope that Louis is going to be at the coronation. There are some people and reports that say he won't be, but I just want to see him get up to mischief.
Me too.
Another fun story was that Prince William surprised some customers at a restaurant that he was visiting in the UK by answering the phone while he was there, on an official visit. The phone just rang, and he was answering their questions about how to get there and, do they have tables available at that moment? And just a really sort of funny off-the-cuff moment that happened recently.
It was really cheeky, and it seemed like a decision that he just made in that moment. I don't think it was planned.
No, and I'm actually sure, they loved that. Do you know what I mean? It was such great press for them because it just shows, it's the whole, they're just like us. So
they like to answer calls, not prank phone calls, but a prank answer.
And it's funny, if you watch the video, he's holding the phone and they're asking, directions. And so the owner is right next to him. He's like, how do we, is it on this street? How do we?
Yeah.
So it's cute.
Entertaining. A good watch.
Definitely. And we have, obviously we're talking about Meghan today. Meghan made a surprise appearance introducing her good friend, photographer Misan Harriman, who has photographed the couple frequently and has also photographed not just the couple, but their kids when Misan was going to be giving a TED Talk.
Yeah, and this is someone who has been in Meghan's life for quite some time. He's photographed Lilibet. I think it was her official portrait, right? On her first birthday. He
the unveiling of, he does these, there's not many photos that we get, from Meghan and Harry that they sanction. And he does a lot of them.
Yeah, he also took the photo of Meghan and Harry's pregnancy announcement with Lilibet, that beautiful photo when they're both lying under the tree.
Yeah.
So it seems like she has really entrusted these milestone moments to him.
Yeah, clearly this is someone that matters to her enough to make a public appearance, which is not something, again, it's just a video appearance, but enough to warrant that is something, because they're clearly very selective about what type of, public appearances and outings they make. Jodie, welcome to Spilling Royal Tea.
Thanks, Sean. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? It's been a minute since we've...
It's been a minute.
Yeah, since we've gone to chat. My running joke on the podcast is that this whole pod is just really an excuse for me to get to talk to all the people I know and my friends who, are in the royal world or follow it in any extent. We've worked together before, covering the royals, and you have a long history as well, sort of following them. And I'm always curious, how people first did start covering the royals, or what their understanding and knowledge of them was up until that point. So I'm curious, where you started first following the royals and what you knew about them beforehand.
Yeah, well, I think what started really my interest in them was the Queen came to Toronto. I mean, I live in Toronto. And I waited out front of the church she was attending that day with a bunch of people, and just seeing how excited people were and see how people lined the streets to see her and Philip at the time was just amazing. It was just such a rush that, it made me really appreciate who they were.
Yeah.
And then from there, I just sort of got into it. And then, working in entertainment news coverage for, the last 17, 18 years, they are obviously one of the biggest entertainment stories every single year.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think that they're more so, as you said, you're in Toronto, which is a member of the Commonwealth. The Queen formerly and the King is the head of state of Canada and of other members of the Commonwealth. Do you think that stories about the royals are bigger in Canada than maybe they even are in the US? Do people pay closer attention to them, generally speaking?
I would say pre-Meghan, 100%, it was much bigger in Canada, especially after Diana passed and there wasn't as sort of much happening, up until when Kate showed up. Like, I don't think people in America didn't seem as interested in the royals as Canadians did because of that connection that we had the Queen. And plus the Queen, she came here, I think, at least 11, 12 times over her reign. So she's been here a lot. Kate and Will came here during their sort of post-honeymoon phase as well. So like there has always been a lot of visit and a lot of interest in royals coming to Canada. So I think that really has sort of tipped us a little bit more than you. But I think once Meghan showed up and the interest of Meghan being an American actress, although she shot most of her career in Canada, she's still an American actress. And I think that sort of brought a whole new life into the royals in America.
So diving into the nitty-gritty of what's happened this week with Meghan and Charles and these letters coming out, what do you think of the timing of these letters being leaked, happening now just 2 weeks before the coronation, when these letters are, as Meghan says in her statement, 2 years old, essentially?
Right. Yeah, well, I guess it depends on who you believe, right? Like, I think, to me, it feels that these letters came out at this time for a reason.
Right.
The reason being that, Meghan is not there. She's sort of given a sort of stance to it without actually saying anything by releasing these letters about her not being there. But as you said, like, she's sort of denied that fact that it came out this time. But as you know, anything that sort of happens about the royals is either highly timed or highly thought out beforehand. So I
even
think,
when it's sources, that's the thing.
Even when it's sources, yes, yeah. Even when it's sources. So I think there was a reason why it was released at this time.
How do you think Charles and Meghan come out of this story? Do you feel that the story, speaks negatively or is meant to like put Meghan in or a negative light, or if it does cast her in a negative light, or Charles, even, and the monarchy in a negative light? Because there's the question of, for example, the insinuation, if you believe the story, which, says that there wasn't any change or response from the palace to these questions about unconscious bias, which could be a knock against Charles and the monarchy.
Yeah, I see that angle. I think at first blush, this is a loss for Meghan more than it is for Charles. Only because of there's a little bit in the letter that says something along the lines that it sort of brushes off the comment that was made in Oprah, that somebody asked about what Archie would look like when it came to complexion. That was sort of brushed off as almost a nothing comment in the sort of back and forth between these letters. And I kind of think, and I don't know what you think, but like, I after hearing the letters, after hearing everything Meghan has said, after hearing everything Harry has said on his spare press tour, I kind of feel like the person who made these comments is a sort of non-essential member of the royal family.
That's interesting, because if you take into context, what Meghan said in the interview, which is that she said it would be very damaging to them, meaning the firm, the monarchy, if she were to reveal the name of the person who made those comments, which I had actually forgotten. I went back and reviewed her explicit, the exact language. And she said that that the conversations happened on more than one occasion, which I had forgotten about.
I forgot about that too.
I think that's something, because, I think that it's sort of been baked in that it was one conversation. But so you think that it was maybe not, because later also, like the day after, like, we should remember the interview aired, there was a follow-up comment from Gayle King and Oprah, on morning news saying that Harry and Meghan told them that it wasn't the Queen or Prince Philip, because that was the assumption a lot of people were making.
Yeah, they did. So that was automatically denied. There's that one book coming up about Charles, which doesn't confirm, says that it was Charles who made the statement, but the palace has denied that. There's some people who thought Camilla was the person who made the comment, but that has also been denied. I really don't think it was William and Kate. So who does that leave us with, right? If it's none of those 6 sort of major members, who does that leave with us? Was it Fergie? Like who was it, right?
So who do you think, what's the Latin phrase? Like cui bono, right? Or who does it benefit? It's, as you said, it seems to make Meghan look maybe not, it put her in the best light as a result of this story. But the question is always the sourcing. It comes from a British paper, The Telegraph, but as well, there are sources close to Meghan mentioned in this story. But there seems to be an agenda behind it being released.
I don't part of me doesn't think it was, someone on Meghan's side who leaked this story, because Meghan's done with this. There's nothing from her to gain from this, really,
exactly.
Right? If Charles didn't make any change, if there was nothing really for her to get out of it. She's not going to coronation regardless. She knows that she's not a well-liked person in the UK. Right. So, she's not gaining anything from this. Maybe Charles is getting something from it because it does sort of make it seem a little less important in Meghan's eyes, the way the letter's written.
And it's interesting because, if I've kind of made this argument all along as well, that if it is, Harry has said that any statements or any not statements, but any sourced stories that have royal sources, he believes are all approved at the top, right? At the top level from the primary parties, whether it's William and Kate or Charles and Camilla. My personal view, just based on having worked in this, is that I don't think that that's always the case. I think that there are, that was what I was going to ask you, because the funny thing about this is that it, again, in a way it benefits Charles, this story, but it also overshadows him. And it makes me think that there's a personal score that someone is maybe trying to settle, or just someone doesn't want to let go of the Meghan story. Because it seems that Charles does want to move on from it. So to me, it seems like this is not coming from, it's coming from a palace source. It's coming from someone who is either they may not work there anymore because this was 2 years ago, but it's someone that has that knowledge. But I don't buy that it necessarily has been signed off at the highest level. Do you?
No, I agree with you. I think the reason why that we're hearing about this probably is because the Royals is a business for people who cover it, for people who consume it. Right. The Telegraph, I'm sure, is getting tons of hits on their site for this exclusive story, right? And so I think, I'm not saying that this letters didn't happen. I'm pretty sure they probably did, but I don't think this is something, as you said, I don't think this is something that Charles signed off on. I don't think this is something that Meghan signed off on. I think it's somebody who had this information and found a way to make money from it.
I think that you're right on the money with that, because it just doesn't pass the snuff test to me. That it would be that Charles or Meghan or anyone at that level would have been the ones that wanted this story out there.
Exactly, yeah.
But interestingly, as you said, Meghan responded, and I'm curious what you made of, one, why she decided to respond to this, because it could kind of be. I think there's a world in which you could argue it's a nothing burger, because it is about something from 2 years ago. And then what you made of the tenor of her response and just what she actually said.
Right. I think Meghan confirmed that this letter was written because I think deep down, Meghan wants Harry and Charles to be on good terms. And I think if she can come across as the person who barters that deal for them to be on good terms, that looks really good for her. And maybe that looks better for her to sort of get back, in on, the royal family. No one wants to be that person who is seen as the person who's blamed for splitting somebody up, right? Or causing a family rift. No one wants to be seen as a person. You do want to be seen as the person who can get it back together.
Who heals it, right?
Who heals it, right? And I think if you look at the Netflix documentary, Meghan speaks so proudly of that moment about Charles walking her down the aisle, that I think she still has this sort of kindness towards Charles a bit. So yeah, I think, but then at the same time, as you said, like her tenor of the thing is very like, don't come for me. Like,
right?
I have
it's like,
nothing to do with this.
It's a clap back in a way, I felt like.
Almost, right? Yeah, the best way you can in a professional statement, right? Like, it's like...
Per my previous email.
Yes.
Like, it's got the same, like, content, like, tone as that.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's always... There's so much nuance in everything Meghan and Harry do.
Right. Anything royal.
And then they so many times contradict each other too, right? So like as you always brought up with what Harry said in his interview with ITV, and even what he said when he talked to Anderson Cooper when he's promoting Spare, there were a lot of things in there that he said that were different than what he was said either in the Netflix doc or what he said in the Oprah interview.
Totally. And I think that's, and sometimes it seems like him and Meghan are maybe not on
the same page.
Page, right?
Yeah. But that can happen in relationships though, right?
Right, exactly. One of the things we also have been talking about with the coronation, which I do think relates to why, or could relate to anyway, why Meghan would respond, is the fact that the coronation is falling on Archie's fourth birthday, Prince Archie's fourth birthday. Yeah. There's conspiracy theories that this was done intentionally. The story in the Telegraph was saying that they believed there was no way that Meghan was going to attend the coronation because of those letters, right? Because they kind of just left and nothing happened afterwards. Meghan has said that she's not going to the coronation because she wants to be with her son. Archie and Lilibet were not included on the invitation to the coronation. There seems to be a subtext, or I wonder if you could argue that there's a subtext that Meghan is responding in this statement because she wants to make clear that the reason she has not lied, that the reason she is not going to the coronation is not because of these letters. It's truly because of her son.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think she wants people to believe, whether it's true or not, that the reason she's not going is for Archie. Right. But I don't know. I also think part of me is like, if she got the invite, part of me thinks she would go. Like, I think, there's part of me that still thinks that she has this desire to be seen by, this is a big event. It's going to be seen by a lot of people.
It's a historic event.
It's a historic event, as much as, one of the things that a lot of people have really turned the tide on them for is the fact that they constantly ask for privacy, and then you see them at a lot of different things and doing things. So I think their idea of privacy is different than what the public's idea of privacy is. But yeah, I don't know. There's also at the same time, like, it is only, not to sound crass or anything, but it is Archie's fourth birthday. It's not.
I thought about this when it came out because, and granted, this is no shade at my brother and sister-in-law and my family, but they have a very loose relationship with I have 4 nephews, with their children's birthdays and like what day it is celebrated on. Like it's if there is a thing that's happening, like they were on a road trip when they were moving recently and they thought, okay, well, the kids are traveling with their friends who are also on a road trip. So we're going to celebrate, one of my nephew's birthday, who's a few weeks away, but let's do it now. So, and he's not 4, he's a little bit older. Yeah. So I did think that, like, how sacred is a 4th birthday compared to the coronation of your father-in-law and the monarch of, the United Kingdom.
Yeah. The day he's been waiting 7 decades for.
That hasn't, something that only hasn't happened in 7 decades too.
Yeah. Yeah, like same thing. My daughter just turned 12. She had her sort of birthday party 3 or 4 days before she actually turned 12. So I think there are a lot of parents who would sort of laugh and giggle a little bit at the importance of a 4-year-old's birthday party. Yeah. You're still going to celebrate the kid's birthday. It might not be on the exact day.
Another point about her statement in response to all of this is that she said, I'm living in the present, you know? And I think there are a lot of people, and I'm not saying I agree with them, but there are a lot of people who watched the docuseries, or at least saw clips of it, had seen the Oprah interview or had seen clips of it or coverage. It was impossible, I think, to avoid coverage of Spare, Harry's book, because of how sensational the headlines were and the drip, drip, drip of them all. And I think a lot of people would question, are you living in the present?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think maybe that's sort of why the sort of narrative of this 4-year-old's birthday party has sort of taken such hold, because she wants to, again, go back to being in the present, and sort of what you said, earlier, that nothing that Harry and Meghan do is not planned. It is not sort of controlled. By saying words like being in the present, by saying I'm staying here to celebrate my child's birthday in his moment of the 4th birthday, are all sort of in sort of line with the narrative they're trying to tell, right? Yeah. But yes, there are people out there who, whether you agree or not, don't think that Meghan and Harry have been able to move past the past and into the present.
And to that point, we're all wondering, I guess, like, what is the present? Like, what does the present and the future look like for Meghan and Harry, Yeah,
well, there's a lot to unpack there. There's, I think their way ahead is sort of what they've already sort of tried to do, which was get a Spotify deal, get a Netflix deal,
right?
Work with charities. But where they sort of missed on those things is what you've said, is that they didn't move forward with those. They just concentrated on the past. And I think even with Spare, and then when Harry said, I had 400 more pages I could have released, people are like, no, like, this has to stop.
Right, because there were then questions, is he going to release another book?
Right, yeah. And he has a part of that deal. He has to release another book about the Invictus Games. That's part of
right.
his deal.
But then even that is going to, that there's going to be personal tea in that.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
So I think, for them to move forward, they really do have to almost do something way out of the box, not be focused on anything royal. Whether I can't think of what it could be,
but
right
like
now.
Diana
but
and Landmines, for example, something on that level.
That's great. Yeah, exactly. Something maybe expect from them, but something that does make a difference, and something where they can sort of just focus everything they do on that sort of cause moving forward, and stop bringing up the past, because they won't be able to move forward by doing that. Like if they could read the room about what happened after the Netflix doc, after Harry's Spare tour, it was clear that people were tired of it.
Yeah. Jodie, thank you so much for making the time and for sharing your insight. It's always great to chat with you. I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Jodie is such a great person to talk about all of this, because he has followed the royals for so long. I've gotten the privilege to work with him on a documentary about Meghan and Harry, and has also, I think, the really valuable insight, which we talked about, that he lives in Canada. Yeah. He has a background in entertainment news, but he also has that experience of living with the monarchy kind of like all around him, growing up into now, to where the monarchy actually still plays a role in the government of his country, and where it's a place where the royals go to a lot. Yeah. So I thought that it was really interesting, and it's great always getting the insight from people who have worked with the palaces, who have worked with royal sources, and I thought what I really enjoyed was talking about the idea of sourcing, and like who is authorizing the leak of these letters, and who's not involved in it, because again, I thought it is a very big deal about who ends up signing off on these, any of this information being leaked. I think the other thing that about this week is that Meghan takes the spotlight in a story that seemingly she did not, want out there. She's not trying to be in the spotlight, but someone in the know of what happened 2 years ago in the palaces wanted this story out there because of the fact that Meghan isn't attending the coronation. And so her presence either is looming, whether it's physical or just physically absent. And I don't know that we're going to escape that anytime soon.
And one thing that I have reflected upon since we even just started to record this podcast is it's not just about Meghan and her image. I think that the most positive read on this is, as we've mentioned, and as you discussed with Jodie, that she might actually be trying to participate in the healing of a broken relationship.
Which is interesting.
These letters and the ways and the timing in which they were leaked might not facilitate such healing.
Yeah, and that's why she would maybe want to comment. So, if you can believe it, the coronation is 9 days away. Its now focus is going to be on Prince Harry, I think, a lot. There's always the chance that, again, we were not expecting the story about Meghan, but my attention is certainly going to be on if we get any more stories about Harry and any drama about him getting to the UK and what he wants and what Charles doesn't want for his participation. So we're going to have to wait and see. So be sure to come back and tune in to the next episode of Spilling Royal Tea, where undoubtedly we'll have some more news that we weren't anticipating. Spilling Royal Tea is a production of the TMZ Audio Network. It's produced by Maggie Van Dorn. Wild Young is our in-studio producer. Make sure you never miss an episode and subscribe or follow Spilling Royal Tea on your favorite podcast app. And if you like the show, share it with a friend or someone you know who likes to spill the tea. You can also help us grow the podcast by rating and reviewing Spilling Royal Tea on Apple Podcasts. I'm your host, Sean Mandell. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk next week.